When I found my daughter's school schedule posted in a Facebook group full of complete strangers, my blood ran cold. And right underneath it, this is what happens when you break HOA rules. Actions have consequences. Posted by none other than Karen, our neighborhood's self-declared queen of petty power. What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, is that my brother works deep inside a 3-letter agency. He's not just some IT guy. He hunts people like her. And once I showed him the screenshots, he didn't say a word. He just stood up and said, "Give me 24 hours. Let me back up. My name's Ben. I live in a quiet cul-de-sac in a mid-sized suburban neighborhood with my wife and 2 kids. We bought our house 3 years ago because it had a good school district, low crime, and decent privacy, at least until we ran into Karen. You know the type. She's the HOA president, self-appointed, never actually voted in, drives a Lexus, walks her tiny dog like she's patrolling a royal courtyard, and acts like the whole neighborhood owes her something. She had a clipboard before we even unpacked. "This tree is 3 inches over regulation height," she said on our first day. "You'll want to fix that before next week's inspection." I laughed, thinking it was a joke. She didn't. From then on, she made it her mission to enforce the rules. She'd issue us fines for imaginary violations, kids' bikes left out for 5 minutes, having solar panels too visible from the street, and even one for excessive grilling smells. I paid some of them just to shut her up, but eventually I pushed back. That's when she escalated. First, it was the snide comments on the HOA newsletter. Then she tried to block our driveway with her trash bins. But none of it touched us, not really, until she crossed a very serious line. One morning, my 11-year-old daughter came running into the kitchen holding her iPad. "Dad, why is my picture online?" "What do you mean, sweetie?" She showed me a Facebook group, some private HOA group I wasn't even a member of. There, plain as day, was a post from Karen. "Let's all keep an eye on this family, especially the kids. Here's their schedule, so we know when they're coming and going." Attached to it was a screenshot from our neighborhood school's app, my daughter's school calendar, her photo, and our last name. My hands were shaking. I showed it to my wife. She gasped and clutched her chest. "That's not just wrong. That's dangerous." It was no longer about annoying rules or neighborhood drama. Karen had just doxed our child. I immediately called the school and explained everything. They confirmed that the school's app was secure and hadn't been breached. That meant only someone with access to it, like a parent, could have seen that information. And Karen, she used to be on the PDA. I took screenshots of everything, her post, the comments, the timestamps, and then I made one phone call to my brother. Now, my brother Adam isn't your typical nerd. He's ex-military, did cyber defense during his last tour, and now works for a federal task force that investigates digital crimes. His exact job title? I don't even know, but I've heard words like counter-intrusion, domestic trace ops, and high-level data forensics. Translation: if you've ever posted something shady online, he knows. He showed up at my house within an hour. I handed him the screenshots. He read them silently, face tight, then looked at me and said, "She messed with your daughter?" I nodded. He stood up and pulled his phone from his pocket. "I'm going to need the Wi-Fi password and a cup of coffee." I don't know everything he did that day. I'm not even sure I want to know. But I do know this. He set up a secure laptop at my kitchen table, logged into his encrypted network, and started tapping keys like he was disarming a nuclear warhead. He barely blinked. Every so often, he'd mutter something like, "She used her HOA email. Idiot." Or, "You can't just mask your IP with a Chrome extension, lady." By dinner, he had a full trace. Karen had accessed the school's public login portal, scraped visible names and photos, and then cross-referenced that with a third-party people search site to pull our address and email. She didn't technically hack anything, but she absolutely compiled and weaponized private data and shared it in a public forum with the clear intent to harass. In the government's eyes, that's intentional data misuse with malicious intent. Adam calmly printed a packet and placed it in a folder. "You can give this to the local police, but I'm sending it higher." That night, Karen must have sent something. She posted again. People need to stop overreacting. It's just public information. If you don't want your stuff online, maybe follow the rules. The comments section lit up. Some neighbors backed her up, but many more started asking, "Wait, did you actually post a child's info? And isn't this a crime?" The next morning, 2 black government SUVs rolled slowly through our street and parked in front of Karen's house. I watched from my porch with a coffee in hand. 2 agents in dark suits knocked on her door. Karen stepped out in her usual smug posture until they held up their IDs and handed her a folder. She turned white. I don't know exactly what they told her, but the yelling started 10 minutes later. She was screaming, "I didn't mean to do anything wrong. And he's the one who broke the HOA rules." The agents didn't flinch. One of them calmly asked to see her phone and her laptop. She refused. They didn't care. They handed her a search warrant. That's when she screamed loud enough for the whole cul-de-sac to hear. "This is harassment. I'm the victim here." The agents didn't respond. They walked inside with her. I watched through my front window as 2 federal agents combed through Karen's living room with precision, unplugging her laptop, collecting thumb drives, and even asking about the router she was using. She was still arguing, of course, still claiming she had every right to enforce HOA values. "I was protecting the community," she shrieked at one point. "That family is disruptive." One of the agents just shook his head and muttered, "They always say that." Meanwhile, the neighborhood had gone dead silent. You could hear a lawn sprinkler a block over, but every house on the street had a curtain slightly parted, every neighbor glued to what was unfolding like it was a live episode of a true crime show. One lady across the street even pulled out binoculars. An hour later, the agent stepped outside with a hard drive, 2 phones, and a smug look of finality. Karen tried to follow them, yelling, "This is abuse of power. You'll hear from my lawyer." They didn't even turn around. But then it got better. The next day, Adam forwarded me a brief summary of the case escalation. Apparently, Karen's online activity had already raised a few red flags on a government watch list for domestic data misuse. What she did to my family triggered an expedited investigation that uncovered something far worse. She had done this before. A few months earlier, in a different neighborhood she used to live in, she'd leaked medical information about a neighbor who parked a wheelchair-accessible van on the street. The local police never followed through, but the feds had archived it. Now, they had a pattern, and she had just gift-wrapped them a fresh case. I didn't even have to press charges. The Department of Justice took over. A formal letter arrived 2 days later stating Karen was under federal investigation for digital harassment, unauthorized data gathering, and online endangerment of a minor. The phrasing wasn't vague, it was sharp, the kind that makes lawyers panic. And just like that, Karen disappeared. Her Lexus was gone within the week. A for sale sign popped up in her yard that Friday, quietly. No open house, no goodbye. I heard through the grapevine that she moved in with her sister out of state until things cool off. But based on Adam's tone, things weren't going to cool off anytime soon. The HOA was forced to issue a public apology and temporarily shut down its Facebook group. A new president was elected, one who actually had a soul, and every fine we'd ever been given was overturned. And as for my daughter, she's fine now. We locked down every profile, scrubbed everything from the internet, and taught her what to watch out for. She asked me one night, "Dad, is Karen going to jail?" I smiled and said, "That's not up to me anymore." But deep down, I hope she does. About a month after the whole thing blew up, I got a letter in the mail, no return address, plain white envelope. Inside was a printed screenshot of a Reddit post. It was titled, "Can you get in trouble for sharing info about a neighbor who breaks HOA rules?" The username was deleted, but the post was unmistakably Karen's style, full of legal half-truths, victim blaming, and all-caps rage about data being public if it's online. The comments were brutal. Hundreds of people tore her apart. Lawyers chimed in. IT pros chimed in. And one user with a verified badge wrote, "This is exactly the kind of behavior federal agencies prosecute under Title 18. If this is you, lawyer up fast." I laughed out loud. Karen thought she could run from accountability by hiding behind a screen and changing zip codes. But the internet never forgets, and neither does the federal system. What made it sweeter? The screenshot had a sticky note attached to it. In Adam's handwriting, it simply read, "She's still running. We're still watching." That's the thing about my brother. He doesn't brag. He doesn't threaten. He just acts. Quietly. Legally. Thoroughly. People like Karen, they think they're smart because they make noise. But in the end, it's the people who know how to move in silence that bring justice. Life went back to normal after that. The new HOA board was respectful, calm, and completely uninterested in micromanaging people's grills or lawn heights. The fines stopped. The gossip faded. And my daughter? She won an award in her school's cybersecurity poster contest. Her entry said, "Just because it's online doesn't mean it's yours." I hung that one on the fridge, and every now and then, when I see an overzealous neighbor start a petty argument, I just smile, sip my coffee, and think, careful who you mess with. You never know who they're related to. Thanks for watching. If that story blew your mind even half as much as it blew up Karen's life, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe for more, and drop a comment below with your own wild neighbor nightmare. You won't believe what's coming next.